I never was suicidal or anything like that, but I was highly depressed when we closed. I think it's like, imagine trying to do a 100-meter sprint. If you've just run a marathon, your 100-meter sprint's going to be slow and you're not going to be any good at running fast at that point in time. You're much better off taking a break. I think you do need to put in boundaries where you do switch off. When you're a founder, or at least of a high-tech startup where you're raising capital, and that's probably what I'm talking more to, is when you're raising capital and you're running, when you have a run rate, when you have a certain amount of time before you run out of cash, once you get on the treadmill, it feels like you can't stop.
So this is Vulnerable, the first founder mental health podcast powered by Founders Taboo. Let's get into it. How are you?
I'm very well. I've just walked on through Shoreditch to get here. Well, actually, no, I take that back. I've flown from New Zealand just to be here with you, James.
There you go. We get guests from New Zealand. That's extraordinary. How long was the flight?
Oh, mate, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to get over to the UK from New Zealand. It was 36 hours of flight time. Bear in mind that I decided to go to Barcelona first, so we flew New Zealand to Melbourne, Melbourne to Singapore, Singapore to Milan, Milan to Barcelona.
Fuck.
Yeah, yeah, big time.
That's a hell of a lot of flights.
Yeah, and a few sleeping pills, man, gets you through. And then once you're there, you're on adrenaline. It's actually going back that's worse. Like going back to New Zealand from here, that puts you in bed for a few days after you hit the ground.
Literally.
Yeah, literally.
We've been meaning to, actually, I must mention, as we started this, you were like, what's the name of this podcast again? I was like, that is so good. That is so good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Holiday brain, man. I haven't done anything like hard work-wise since...
For years, 2019.
Yeah, something like that.
It's very humbling, very humbling. We've been meaning to record for months now.
Yeah.
I cancelled twice because my dog had the shits, basically.
Yeah, and there was something else. Maybe I was sick. Anyway, yeah.
And you were sick, yeah.
Yeah.
It was basically an excuse being like, fuck this.
Yeah. and then I got a message from Giannis and he was just like, mate, I want to fly you over to the UK to do this podcast in person. So I was like, sweet as, let's go.
That is the power of Founders Taboo. We care. We care about air miles.
Exactly.
It's very, very good to have you. And I'm excited to dig into your story. First and foremost, though, honeymoon was excellent. Congratulations on getting married. How was it?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in a pretty fortunate position where we were middle of the year. We were like, let's pack up all of our stuff. Let's rent our house out and let's just jump on a plane and go to the Mediterranean for 3 months. So main highlight, we spent a month in Greece. We bathed in turquoise coloured water for as long as we could, and yeah, amazing. And now we're here, London, ready to start sort of our proper phase of our marriage, where we're putting down roots and somewhere in Europe and looking to hopefully add a heap of value to some outstanding companies.
And how do you think you manage marriage relationships with being a founder, VP, etc.? How has that impacted relationships?
Oh man, this we could talk about for hours probably, and you'd know firsthand what it's like. I think that if you're about to get into a relationship with someone and you're a founder, it's really important for the other person to understand probably what they're getting into. I mean, Demi, my wife's an absolute saint. So on a Friday, when end of the work week, I would be smashed when I was running Journey. As a founder, I was you'd almost be ghost-like because you're so tired. Yet Friday night, when you're 26, 27, it's supposed to be, let's go out for dinner, let's go out and, I don't know, go for a boogie, whatever it may be. But when you're a founder, you're like, I just want to go home and go to sleep.
Literally.
And to have someone that understands that and supports that, and through the week when you're waking up in the middle of the night with night sweats because you're stressed about something that's going on at work, to have someone who supports you almost unconditionally is incredible. So, you know, actually for a bit of a story, like we closed. This goes to Demi's testament. Why I was like, I gotta wife this woman. When
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm the same, by the way, with Abby. Totally.
Yeah.
But carry on.
When we got to a point with Journey where we were like, we have to close this business down because we're just going to continue hemorrhaging cash, and people within the company were going to be basically idle, and my mental health taken a massive toll, and was like, I can't do this anymore. And throughout that period, the amount of support that I got from Demi was insane. And so, you know, a few weeks after we closed the company, I was like, this is the right time to propose. Like, I've got the bandwidth now almost to really focusing on her. And that's what, over the last, now it's been about 2 years since actually we ended up closing that initial startup, and yeah, we got married, could actually focus, like spend a bit more time focusing on the relationship. But I mean, that was a bit of a spill. I think like the key thing is like she was really supportive of me, but then also spending the time when I could to make sure that I was absolutely supporting her dreams, her desires. And, you know, I think it can be really easy to get sucked in to your startup, to what you're building. I think there's probably a lot of founders who lose the most incredible relationship because 100%. Of their company. And I think I was quite lucky that didn't happen, probably because of how supportive and empathetic Demi was, to be honest, not necessarily because I was the most amazing partner through that period of time. But family comes first. Like, I think and this is what I've experienced firsthand, when your company isn't going to last, or, well, I mean, you'd hope that it would outlast you and outlast the things around you. But the chances of that are actually super, super small, particularly when you're going into high growth SaaS startups. And the people that are going to be there when you hit rock bottom, which is probably likely to happen if things don't go the way you've planned. I think it's really important to invest in those relationships when things are going really well, because you need them there when things aren't going well. And I was just really lucky to have a super supportive partner, now wife, when I went through that myself.
Talk to me about your journey into entrepreneurship.
Well, so after university, my degrees, so I studied accounting, finance, and statistics. Numbers probably directed me to a life in corporate professional services. I did an internship. I was like, nah, this is not me. This is not fun. I can't see myself doing this. And ended up after university joining a startup, to I wouldn't say the horror of my parents, but you know, when you turn down corporate offers who are paying well to go join a startup that's underfunded, you know, eyebrows get raised. Anyway, I joined this particular, it was a health tech, might have been 23 at the time, and loved the autonomy that came with being involved in building something that nobody had all the answers to. So that was really cool. But actually that startup went really, really badly. Like within the first sort of 6 weeks of being there, we missed payday, and like, oh, wonder what's happening here. And as a naive 23-year-old, you're not really too sure why. And then you get fed like a line saying, oh, you know, the money's coming, and you're like, oh, okay, no problem. 10 weeks later, you still haven't been paid, and you thought that, you know, apparently there's some contract waiting on. Anyway, kind of opened my eyes to that particular scene, and during that period of time, myself and one of the other guys at this particular company were like, we need to do something for money. And we're like, oh, why don't we start our own startup? Again, very naive thing to think is that the best way to, you know, be able to put food on the table was to start a startup. So
brilliant.
We ended up, you know, creating this concept called Bot the Builder at the time.
Bot the Builder.
Bot the Builder, yeah, like Bob, but with a T.
Yeah, I got that.
and the premise was, we're like, oh, these chatbot things. This is in 2016. We're like, oh, these chatbot things are taken off. Let's build a platform so everyone can have a chatbot.
It makes sense. I like the name as well, Bot the Builder.
Yeah, it was. We thought we were clever. And so that's how we sort of got into it, was like, kind of needed to make some money and then wanted to eventually start my own business. So that was almost the two things. So probably not a good place to start, to be honest. Like, we didn't have a problem that we wanted to solve. We didn't have like a key mission that we were on. We just needed to put food on the table was more the thing. And we're like, oh, this startup thing looks cool. Like, look at what, I don't know, founders like at the time, Zuckerberg, like, look, man, he started that young. We'll be sweet as. Let's just go. And in 3 years' time, we'll scale this company, and then everything will be hunky dory. For whatever reason, it sounded really easy when I was 23. And fast forward, a few years, and we'd gone through a few different investment rounds, and we got to the point where, like, actually, one of the issues that we had was we weren't focusing on a core problem. So we had like a really generic, flat platform. And there's hundreds of chatbot companies out there. And so there's like, well, we needed to focus. And so we ended up going to a Fintech accelerator. We focused on the insurance space. And
why did you focus on the insurance space? What about the insurance space meant that you thought, yeah, that's the right area?
Underserved and not sexy.
Interesting.
So we're like, let's focus on this area, let's uncover some key problems, and let's really try focusing on solving one of those problems. And we got to the point where we found that people were often buying the wrong type of insurance, and insurers weren't overly digitally savvy. Like, well, what if we created a platform that helped, or sort of used our technology to create a platform that helped an individual understand what type of insurance they need and buy that insurance in a seamless manner. And we could sell that software to insurers. And so we went down that path, we did that, and that's when we started to see so much more traction within the market because we had focus. So I think if there's anything that I can say initially that caused me a lot of stress and anxiety was the fact we didn't have a focus. What it meant was that I was constantly context switching between, if you have a whole variety of different types of customers, you are continually trying to understand their problems and how you solve their problems, and then you're context switching again, and the amount of like mental compute, call it, that you need to do that was unsustainable. And so that's why it ended up on a Friday being fried. Once we focused, yes, I was still tired at the end of the week, but the problems that you were continually looking at were second nature. So, but this took like 3 years to get to this point, right? So I'm frying myself for 3 years before we were like, oh, we need to focus on a key problem. Yeah, I think it's a big fuck because, I was never replenishing, never taking like proper holidays to re-energize myself and to look after me.
How did you cope with that?
I think growing up in New Zealand, there's this attitude of she'll be right, and you don't talk about your feelings. And we actually have really bad mental health statistics in New Zealand because of that, like harden up attitude. And that's kind of what I used to get through that period of time, was just like, harden up, like you'll be right. And I mean, I would exercise regularly, like I made sure I kept doing that, but it wasn't a healthy way to get through it. Like I didn't talk to people about my worries. I think it's a very common thing for founders to always say, yeah, it's going really well. I've got this, and this. I go to, a founder catch up. You probably did the same thing, or you probably see the same thing. I mean, where you go along and you're in a room to say there's 30 founders in there. You ask them, how's your business going? Every single one of them will say, this is going, like, it's going amazing. But there's 1,000 fires that they're thinking about that are burning at the moment. And I think that needs to change. Like I've been exactly like that. When there's, yes, sure, there are things that are going great in your company, but it's really important to, I think, admit and acknowledge the things that are causing you stress, because that person that you talk to about that issue could actually help you solve it. And at the same time, studies show that when you talk about your anxiety, when you talk about the things that are causing you stress, it reduces I think it's the cortisol levels. Don't go quoting me on the scientific part of it, but that reduces that stress or anxiety.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean, that period of time, super stressful. Once we got to 2019, we had finally found like what our key offering our key proposition was, and that was when we started to properly call it takeoff or start to see takeoff. We were ranked as one of the top 2 fintechs in Asia Pacific by Money 2020. We signed 3 of the largest insurers in Australasia to early stage agreements, and we started to attract investment from across Australasia as well, and it was looking really promising. Deloitte recognized us as a company to watch. And then COVID happened, and we're just starting to see the impact of, say, focusing on going after a key problem within a underserved industry. And then the issue with COVID was that it stops travel, right? And when you're particularly through Asia, a lot of business is done by being in person, them liking you as a person, and then, okay, you can also solve my problem, so let's rock and roll. But I couldn't be there in person anymore. So doing this virtually, trying to build that rapport virtually was super, super difficult, and I just actually couldn't do it. And we also found that at the time, insurers went from being like, we want to generate more GWP, gross written premium, so revenue, to we need to cut costs. Our software did not cut costs. It helped them generate more revenue. And we just got either master service agreements cancelled or not renewed to a full-time contract. And so over the space of 6 months, we were staring at okay, this business is now no longer going to work because we don't know when this is going to end. And we still had, so now we're at about September 2020, we still have a bunch of cash in the bank. We still have runway. We can actually pivot and do something different. We even looked at going direct to consumer, using our technology to become the insurance broker almost. And by that stage, I was fried because...
When you say fried, what do you actually mean by that?
I would wake up in the morning after 8 hours of sleep and I'm still tired. And I don't have any energy. I'm not motivated by what we're doing anymore. I'm not interested or don't have a desire to solve the problem. I feel like I've had a guts full and I just want to stop.
Hey, can I ask a massive favour? Can you subscribe to this podcast right now, if you haven't already? Your subscribes, your sharing, your liking, your commenting all over social media is increasing our reach, and it's meaning that founders out there know it's okay to talk about their mental health. Thank you.
Vulnerable, a Founders Taboo podcast, has been created to raise awareness on the highs, lows, and taboos of the founder journey, to amplify the raw and unfiltered stories of founders, and to remind those listening that they are not alone. Founders Taboo is a movement dedicated to improving access to support for founders' mental health and well-being, in order to build a healthier startup ecosystem as a whole. Entrepreneurship is undeniably hard, but it doesn't have to cause hardship. We know that entrepreneurship is often lonely, but it doesn't have to be. Our support includes a safe space to take off the mask and interact with fellow founders in a free online community. You can access hundreds of psychologically informed resources and exercises to build up your mental health literacy. You can source and connect with startup and well-being professionals. You can participate in live support sessions, attend retreats, and much more. We want to promote mindfulness in entrepreneurship, harmony rather than conflict between health and building a business. And this all starts with speaking out and breaking some taboos. Join the movement. All founders are welcome. Follow us on LinkedIn to keep up to date and get involved.
I even got messages from investors because we'd keep in touch with investors. We even do different presentations with investors during this period of time because it was a difficult time. And they were like, you don't have your mojo. You don't have your
oomph.
Yeah, that we're used to seeing. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I just, I think at one point I was like, oh no, I just need to take these vitamin D tablets. I'm not getting enough sun because it was winter time, and almost making these excuses to myself that weren't true. I don't think. And we got to September, and that was when we lost the last commercial contract we had with an insurer. And we're like, we need to stop. And this other opportunity to go direct to market. It wasn't exciting enough, and also I was burned out. There's no point building a company. It doesn't matter how great the idea is if the founder is not capable probably of going again. And bear in mind now we've been going for 5 years. You always felt like you were on, even when it was like Christmas and New Year and those sort of things. There's always things you think about work or think about your startup.
Do you think you can move away from that mindset? Because that state, because something I've been exploring recently, which is switching off. And I don't think we as founders ever switch off, but our propensity to reduce the amount that we sometimes think about our companies, our startup strategy, wherever it goes, just settles down a little bit. It's always there, which can be healthy, but equally it is going to always be there. And I just wonder whether that resonates with you or not now that you've gone through this.
Yeah, it totally does. Like I think when you are younger, and I think there's a lot of founders that do start young, is it's like we just need if you're awake, you're working. And yeah, that's super unhealthy.
Which is bullshit, by the way.
Yeah, totally. And you can't, like, I think it's like, imagine trying to do a 100-meter sprint. If you've just run a marathon, your 100-meter sprint's going to be slow and you're not going to be any good at running fast at that point in time. You're much better off taking a break, taking the weekend as an example before going again. And so I think you do need to put in boundaries where you do switch off, like, hey, I'm not going to work past this time, and this is what I'm going to do when I'm switching off, and this is how I'm going to take care of my mental health. Like at Groov, one of the things that we would talk to companies about was putting in place your daily mental health plan. What are you going to do on a daily basis to look after you? And that sort of helps with that switch off. Small examples, going to charge my phone out of my bedroom to make sure I get a good night's sleep.
That's really interesting you brought that up as number one. I didn't think you would.
No, so it's more to just like
because I do that now.
Yeah,
I've had that habit in play because it really is a habit for the last 18 months. One of the best things I've done for my sleep.
Yeah,
as well as go to bed at 9.
Yeah,
go to bed early.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and not have a dog in my room.
That must be hard though.
They are, they fart, they burp, they smell, they walk around in the night. It's like, no.
They lick themselves in the middle of the night as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, come on, man, I need sleep. So not having dogs in the room.
Yeah.
Massive hack.
A bit.
Digress.
No, that's okay. Actually, a question for you. Like, do you have like a set of daily things, daily rituals, call it, that you do to look after you?
Yeah. Number one, walk the dog. I either do it once a day or twice a day, because Abby, my fiance, will do it the other time, or we'll both do it at the same time. So we do that once or twice, and just getting out and about into a woods. My time to, I have got my phone or I've got my headphones on or something, or sometimes I don't take anything, but just being able to remove myself from my laptop or my screens and just be like, fuck this. I don't need to be doing this. These guys don't give a shit if I'm working. All they want to do is go for a poo and go for a walk. That is so important. So that's one big thing. I try and train every day.
Exercise.
Not
jumping on the tube.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I try and exercise every day. Even if it's like yesterday I didn't feel great, but I sat on a bike in the gym. The process, the action of going to a gym, even if it's to sit on a bike or even just go in a steam room and sauna and just sit there and just be like, wow, okay, that is massive. And then I tried to spend at least 30 minutes, an hour of quality time with Abby. And that really is my kind of day-to-day habits.
Awesome.
That I'm pretty good at sleeping. Like my sleep's rarely affected. Sometimes I get some poor sleep, but most of the time I'm getting a good 7 to 9 hours a night, because we're regimented, in bed by 9, read a bit, 9:30, tops asleep by 9:45.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And that just every night. And then we wake up to Classic FM now.
Oh, okay.
In the morning, yeah. It's good.
7 alarm clock.
Yeah. 6:45 alarm clock, Classic FM comes on.
Nice.
And it's just such a nice way to wake up to classical music. It's like, wow, okay, this is cool. Yeah.
Bit more relaxing to some screaming rock.
Yeah, exactly. And those really are like absolute non-negotiables. Have to be done.
I think, what you were saying there is super important for, like, if I was to recommend to any person that was just about to start their own business, that was going to become a founder, the first thing is, this is going to be fucking hard.
Yeah.
And you have to put in place a routine or some non-negotiables, as you'd call it, for your life, for an everyday thing. It might be, like you're saying, you're getting up, you're going for a walk to start the day. You might be leaving your phone at home, Slack, email, all that stuff, that can wait because this is your period of time for you. And then you might have, look, I'm contactable during these hours. You might have been put in place in the mornings and my time. Like, these are the things where I have to do the strategy work, or whether I'm working on my time as opposed to being reactive to others. In the afternoon, maybe that's when you're hitting email and Slack and that type of thing. And then you're also stopping at, let's say you put in place like non-negotiable, I stop work at 6 p.m. or I stop work at 5 p.m. or whatever it is, the life you want to lead. Because if you're constantly working through to 9 p.m, man, you're gonna burn yourself out. And
what's the point? And don't work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I don't work 7 days. I work 6 days a week, but I work solid 5, and then I have Sunday where we'll take the dogs out for a long walk, and then we'll possibly go over to my parents for Sunday roast, and then I'll come back and do a few hours of work because it sets me up. Like, so I work 6 days a week, but you don't need to be working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, best of luck for you for the long term doing that.
Yeah.
It's not gonna, like, there are gonna be some founders out there who do it, like, cool, no problem. But 99% of the rest, just don't do it. It's not gonna change anything.
Totally. What I also even say to, like, jumping into becoming a founder, I think you talk about this quite often on LinkedIn, James. It's like, it can look very glamorous from like what people put out there is like, they might be in a new country every couple of weeks and they are at a new conference, looks like they're meeting some cool people, looks like the company's getting a lot of traction, looks like they're hiring all these like staff members, and people from the outside are like, man, their lifestyle looks awesome, I want to start a company. And what they don't see is all the turmoil that's going on underneath. Every single organization will have issues with it. And when you're a founder, or at least of a high-tech startup where you're raising capital, and that's probably what I'm talking more to, is when you're raising capital and you're running, when you have a run rate, when you have a certain amount of time before you run out of cash, once you get on the treadmill, it feels like you can't stop. And if you're running a solo business where you are a consultant, or you're something where your cash flow is funding you, might be a little bit different because you probably feel like you can switch off because you're not at the mercy of other people. But as soon as you have investors, and as soon as they get bigger and bigger, they want returns, and when that's going through your mind, I can understand how people feel like, I have to work 7 days a week because it just has to work because all these people that trust me with all this money. I know that was what I was thinking. We had I think we had 89 individual investors in Journey.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, bad idea having that many. So for anyone listening to this, like, you're
building an SPV.
Yeah, you're just better off getting like a small number of really convicted investors that can help you and be like advisors while also investing in your business.
How big were the check sizes then with 89? Like, we're talking like 2, 3, 4, 5K? Up to 100?
Yeah, the smallest 5K up to 400 was our range and that was because we took any money on the table because we were, of course, young, inexperienced. And that's also something just to be aware is, I think sometimes people, and I know I was, over eager to start, over eager to go and jump in. And I know this is wonderful in hindsight, but I think I was over eager to jump in without a network, without any proper experience. And that made everything much harder. Like, we see in the news, we see it's like glorified younger founders that are doing like incredible things. They're 23, they have a team of 200 people, they're in 120 countries, whatever it may be. And we're like, oh man, maybe I can do that. When actually there is much higher success rate of starting, don't quote me on this, but I'm sure it's like at a founder age of like late 30s.
Oh yeah.
Once you've actually got some runs like on the board, you understand much more what can and can't go wrong. Maybe you've joined a high-tech startup as an employee and you've learnt a lot of things of what not to do and also a lot of things of what to do. And so you can apply that to the startup that you start. And so, you know, if anyone's listening out there thinking about starting their own business, I think it's really important that you are super convicted by the problem you're starting, but also know that, you know, you don't have to do it now. You can actually wait, and you can get some more experience before jumping, because it will own you for the next 10 years. If it goes well, it's going to own you for the next 10 years. So I think that's just something to take into consideration.
It's really interesting, because I would say that whatever happens with my company now, of which obviously I say whatever happens, 99% of startups fail even if they're doing well, which is a scary statistic. I mean, you raised cash, you had great contracts, you had great traction, and COVID hit. And we'll come on to that in a sec. But with that in mind, it's like, okay, well, I know, yeah, I'm 28. This is my third company. Like, yeah, I've kind of gone through a couple of war wounds now, but equally, I still don't know 1% of the game. And it is a game. And so I'm constantly like, wow, okay, where do we want this to go? And what am I learning along the way? And it's okay to fuck up royally, which we've done. We've pivoted so many times now. We've changed the strategy. We've been like, wow, okay, where are we going here? And that comes with experience. And also, investors really don't tend to invest in first-time founders anymore, especially at the moment, because they're like, whoa, this is going to be a hard road for you, especially if you're a first-time solo founder. Best of luck.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
Lost for words.
Lost for words.
Oh, I just agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did Build the Bot go? Bob the Bot.
Build the bot, bot the build.
Bot the build.
Bot the builder.
Yeah, Bot the builder.
So
brilliant.
So when we decided actually we need to focus on a key issue here, we rebranded to Journey.
Yeah.
And so Journey was about helping insurers sell the right policy to the right person, giving that customer a great journey.
Of course.
With the insurer. So that's where the name came from. Can be applied to a lot of things actually. That name. It's a shame that it's no longer in operation. But actually, one thing I would say about going through that particular process, I was honest about why we closed. Like straight away when we decided we need to close this business down, a lot of founders just disappear into the nighttime. You know, you just stop hearing about them. Like, oh, what happened to that company? And then you're like, they've closed. They're not in existence.
So true.
And where's that person? I don't know.
No.
And one of the hardest things that I had to do, but I knew I had to do because I had employees, was close this publicly so that they all get great jobs, because I wanted them to go into awesome positions, and it gave them the freedom to be talking to other companies, to apply to other organizations, for people to know that there were great employees. We had our final team, they were awesome. So there was, like, when we decided to close, it was 10 of us, 10 full-time employees left, and they all went on to higher positions, getting paid significantly more, with more responsibility. I think there were 3 companies that were started on the back of it. So 3 of them went on to create their own companies.
That's
and
awesome.
That was so cool to see.
That must make you feel proud.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like to know that was able to be created on the back of obviously what they learned before Journey, but also at Journey, and that's then added value hopefully to the ecosystem. So that was really cool. But by shutting down publicly, that was my reason for doing it. Was like, these people need great jobs. That happened. But what also happened was that a lot of people reached out. Like I was flooded with hundreds of messages, and like I kid you not, hundreds of messages from people either offering people within my team positions or offering me a job. And that was hugely humbling. And then what also happened was other companies reached out asking could they buy our software. And so we ended up selling the company about 6 months later.
Wow.
And that wouldn't have happened otherwise, right? We could have just closed the company down quietly.
Of course.
And instead we actually got an exit. Now it's not your glamorous exit like I've still got to work and all of that. But journey lives on in another organization. So I was bought by a company called JAVLN, which was bigger than us. And
I mean, I've heard of JAVLN. When I saw your board advisor, I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah. And so, you know, I stayed on that for just under a year, where it was the idea was, you know, when they'll bring on this journey technology, how to use it within their current software. And actually they've, JAVLN's been doing really well. And then I was moving over here, so it didn't make sense to stay involved. And so that's been great, and that's been a great experience for me. But that I think came from being honest and upfront with people around. And previously, like, while I might have been honest if people wanted to really dig deep and talk to me, I'd tell them, yeah, there's these things that are causing me issues. I was obviously always really honest with my wife. But what people saw on LinkedIn would have always only been the great stuff until this, and they would have been like, holy shit, like what's going on here? And it just showing that vulnerability, given we're on the Vulnerable podcast, makes sense to talk about this, was really important. And I think founders need to be vulnerable with people around them, and it's okay to be vulnerable, like on the social media platform as well, within reason. You don't want to say anything that's going to tarnish like your company's reputation or anything like that. But it is okay to say that you're having a down day, or it's okay to say if your company isn't going the direction that you want it to go right now, right at this moment, because by doing so, you're going to create great relationships with people around you. It's going to open up the doors.
100%. It's really interesting. And is that how you got your position at Groov?
Yeah. So here's another probably interesting point. Back on the back of what happened to Journey, I was like, I'm a seemingly resilient person, and I feel like I'm mentally in a ditch. I never was suicidal or anything like that, but I was highly depressed when we closed, when we shut Journey's doors, and I vowed to do something about mental health. Didn't know what, didn't know how, and I told a few people this, and then actually the day I got engaged, I got a message from the founder, one of the founders of Groov, saying, hey, your name's come up in a conversation, maybe we should have a chat. And, you know, at this point in time, I'd planned to take like 6 months off, learn to surf. I lived right next to the beach. I was like, maybe it's time to do that. And one thing led to another, and then suddenly I was employed, probably 8 weeks after closing, or saying that we were closing Journey, to being employed for another company. It was kind of like, whoa, how did this happen?
What did your wife say?
She was, just do what makes you happy.
Really?
And super supportive of it. And yeah, and so I came on board with them, and they still have a mission to improve 100 million lives around the world. And so by improving people's mental health, and I was like, how can I've just said that I want to do this. How can I say no to this? And so jumped on that, and then over the space of 15 odd months, the company grew by 400%. And my role there was VP of sales. And what was incredible about working at that business, one, obviously because they're about mental health, they really understand taking care of your mental well-being, the most inclusive work environment that I've ever experienced. Like, it was just incredible to work there. You always felt like you can bring your full self to work. And every time we would speak with an organization and they ended up signing to work with Groov or to partner with Groov, we knew that we were going to now be able to help X number of employees. So let's say they're a 1,000-person organization. We were now going to be able to help 1,000 people by the fact that we have done our job of helping them to understand, the organization to understand what their key problems may be, and then how we could potentially solve them together. So, you know, I think in a lot of, say, sales roles, people feel like they're trying to hit quota, or they are pushing the envelope to try and get companies to sign on. They're trying to make money, but actually, if you're falling in love with helping an organization solve a problem, and that you know that now you're about to impact all these people with, you know, hopefully improving their lives, man, super rewarding stuff. And so, you know, roundabout way, like I ended up joining a company that had a mission that really aligned with me. So I don't actually feel like I was working. Like, yeah, sure, there are some days where you have to go through a niggly contract or something like that where you're like, man, I don't really like this. But when you're driven by a mission that you're super aligned to, you don't care about doing, like, call it dirty work. That isn't, like, the work itself isn't interesting, but the overall mission is so important and aligned that you're like, well, this is, I can keep doing this forever.
You mentioned earlier that your mental health was in a ditch when you shut Journey's doors. I mean, that's probably a given. I'd be surprised if somebody wasn't feeling the after effects of that. But how bad did it get? Like, what were the lowest points?
So I'd like wake up in the middle of, well, actually, sometimes I wouldn't even wake up. I'd just have like credible night sweats where, I know this might even sound like overshare, but it would be wet. Like, sorry, it would be cold sweat. Really? So I'm not hot. I'm having cold night sweats. And my wife has only known me, or only had known me while I'd been a startup founder. And she just thought that I was just a sweaty sleeper. But I was just stressed, man. And so there was one thing, and that continued while obviously when shutting down. And some of the other things, like my heart would just start racing.
Really?
And
anything in particular?
I didn't know why.
Really?
And you didn't really want to be seen around. And like I was still able to go and exercise. Like I'd make myself go and exercise, but you wake up in the morning like, don't want to do anything today. Like, there was a constant feeling of that. And then it was like, nah, got to force myself to do something because that would generate hopefully the motivation.
Lethargy.
Yeah, so it was pretty tough. But then once I started at Groov, and this is probably more hindsight now, it gave me purpose. Like I felt like, and that was probably what the issue was when shut down Journey. It's like I felt like my whole purpose over the past 5 years was building that company. Now what's my purpose? I don't know. That was really hard, and you'll appreciate this, that probably a lot of founders' personalities become, or you feel that your value is the company's value. Yeah. And if that's not going well, then you're not going well as a person. And so as soon as you're shutting down your personality or your value, man, it's just like a really shitty feeling.
I said I felt lost. And that was one of the big problems that I had when I realized that I needed to stop, or it needed to stop. It was just a feeling of, I kept saying to Abby, I just don't know. I don't know who I am anymore. And that's very revealing when you actually look at like the language that I was kind of replaying in my head was, I have no idea who I am anymore. And basically my entire self-worth was locked in this world of my company. And so I was just mounting this pressure on myself to, this is going to be successful. This is going to win. This is going to win. We're going to raise this money. We're going to do it. And my self-worth being wrapped around that was one of the worst things that I did. I did it unknowingly. I now know. My self-worth is not wrapped around Luna anymore. Like, of course, I work 110%, even though people see me on camera all the time. But I work 110% on that company being successful, changing the lives of dog trainers and pet owners around the world. But if all goes tits up, and obviously, God help, it'll be awful. But if all goes tits up, I'll be all right, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, that your value is not, your personal value is not, the same as your company's value. And that, if it does fail, which is very, like, hopefully Luna's going to be the next unicorn. Don't get me wrong. If it does go wrong, you nailed it. Like, you're going to be absolutely fine. And as a ex-founder who had to shut down their business and I thought I wasn't going to be fine, I'm fine. I'm well more than fine now. And I think if I had known that prior, or at least been a bit more vulnerable and spoke to more people prior and understood that, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. And you know, it's just a company.
It's really, I went through a bit of a lull recently, kind of a depressive episode about 6 weeks ago. And it all stemmed around my fundraising at the moment. But the message, there wasn't something going the way I wanted it to go. The feedback from the market was just there was just something not quite right. And so I sat down, I had a 5-hour therapy session, right? With my therapist. And he said that depression is often your subconscious's way of telling you that something's not quite right and you need to change. And I fundamentally believe that is the case. And I bring it back round to the feeling of being lost, the feeling of not knowing who I was anymore. That was my subconscious's way of being like, this needs to change. You need to change. You need to take a different path. And whatever happens in the company or whatever happens elsewhere, like, you need to just lean into that.
That's an incredible quote. Can you say it again?
Which part?
The part about the depression.
Is your subconscious's way of telling you that there's something wrong. There's a different path that you need to take. And if you think about your we're all on this rat race, right? We all sometimes try to get off, but most of us are on the rat race. And when things aren't quite going right, or they're not going the right way, or often we don't know about it, but our bodies do. And the subconscious knows, because it's like, hey, these are your value sets. This is what you want to do. This is who you are. That doesn't really change whether you're building a fintech startup or a pet dog or a dog startup. Like, who you are doesn't change. And so when you deviate away from who you are and how you are, it breeds uncomfortability, right? It makes you feel uncomfortable, but you don't quite know. But you keep going down that path because you have no idea until your body starts to tell you, till your mind starts to tell you. And for me, it was just, it always comes back round to depression and being like, I just feel crap. I feel low. I've got no energy. I've got no motivation. I become uninterested. And that is a big red flag for me. And actually, it means that I have to explore why. And so I brought it back round to, I wasn't feeling very good. I mean, this is mad to think that this kind of is where it got to, but I felt that the fundraise, the messaging that I was putting out and how I was raising for the company, and also why I was raising for the company, wasn't congruent with actually my value set as a founder and what I wanted to achieve with the company. And so I stopped fundraising. And I was like, I haven't fundraised for 3 weeks now, which has been the best thing ever. And I went on a digital detox, and for a week, locked my phone in a safe, literally wrote for 4 days about the company and figured it out. And now we're going to start again next week. But that has made me, just lifted me out. And when you think about it, like all these things that happen in your life, you're like, well, fuck me, what happened there? There is a reason why you're feeling that way. You just don't know it yet.
Totally. And I think this is like a super important thing that you're touching on, is like trusting your gut. Like, you might not know what's off, but if you feel that sense of something's not right here, then just wait a little bit, and either go like write it down, try figure out what it is. But if it'll feel like, you know, the jigsaw puzzle's being turned and put into place once you feel like, oh, this is right. It's actually something that I learned from my wife. Like,
really?
She's super big on, you know, trusting your gut. Like, if something feels off, it probably is. And like you were saying about, you know, make some changes, and then you eventually feel something that just sits into place. Like, even more recently, when we were trying to figure out our itinerary, some things just weren't quite fitting into place with like where we're trying to go. Like, something feels off here. And then as soon as we decided to try and go to a different location, different island, whatever it is, and then it's almost like, as you talked about, it's like, holy shit, this feels right. Now I know that's in a completely different example, but it happens probably in the workplace while you're building a startup. While running Journey, I consistently felt like something was off, and I kept going down that path that you talked about, and then I burnt myself out because it wasn't replenishing me. It wasn't aligned to personally, like, you know, I wanted to create extreme value for others, and Journey's business model was probably kind of lining the pockets of the big guys, and that was something that I had to constantly, like, almost lie to myself during the process of building that company, that it's a really good thing to be out there and it's aligned to me, my personal values. But actually, like, how we built the company totally was, but the business model probably wasn't. But tried to, you know, trick myself into believing that it was, and then my gut was always off. And then you're constantly going down this path that you talked about of call it maybe stress, and then eventually it's just too much.
Feeling uncomfortable. It's this underlying feeling that you can't ever put your finger on until you actually. I always, well, I must have stolen this from somewhere, but slow down to speed up, and that is one of the big things that I now tell founders who ask for my advice. I feel like shit. What do I do? Slow down. But it's unnatural. We don't feel like we should be. Yeah. We feel like we should be always going, always on, moving forward, next target, 50% month-on-month growth, 10%, whatever it is. We feel like we have to do that.
But particularly when you go jump on LinkedIn and you see a bunch of your founder friends who are like either hire that new person or raise that extra bit of money, like, oh, damn, I got to go.
Yeah.
And what you did, locking your phone in a safe for a week to save your mental health, I think that type of thing's awesome. I've never done it personally.
Oh, mate, you should. So Unplugged, who I'm big fan of, they are literally a company for digital detoxing. And they send you to literally a cabin in the woods on someone's farm in the middle of nowhere. All these different locations around London. Around the country, by the way. And you go there and you locked your phone in the safe. We both did. Took the dog as well. We were given a compass, a map, a radio, and a phone with no SIM in it for emergencies. And that's how we existed. There was a hob as well. There was a fire, literally like a fire, and a shower and a bed. And that was it. 3 days. And what it meant was that I was like, wow, okay. Fuck it, I'll go on Google. Can't go on Google. Can't go on Slack. Can't do any of this stuff. I was forced to sit there and go, right, okay. A, I've got to talk to you now properly. B, what am I going to do for the next 3 days? And I read and I wrote. And actually, it was the process of writing, which was so unbelievable because I haven't in the last 10 years been able to do that. Mm-hmm. Put my phone somewhere, not worry about something.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
And actually the problem solving I was able to do was unbelievable.
Yeah, I bet.
I highly recommend it, by the way.
No distractions.
If you are looking for something different to do.
So on that note, in 2019, after we had like gone through a long capital fundraising round, Demi, my wife, actually did exactly this for me. She took me to a cabin that had no signal. We were there for 2 nights, and it was the most therapeutic thing that we could have done, where we just read that there was a spa pool at this particular place that you had to light the fire and you warm it yourself, and it took me like 5 or 6 hours of stoking this fire to get the spa pool. What I thought was hot, actually, just there was like a top layer that was warm, underneath was cold. But anyway, it was so therapeutic to be out there, to be in nature, to be disconnected, and didn't actually miss anything.
No.
And that's probably something that as founders you don't probably appreciate. Like, I've got to always be on, got to make sure I've got my notifications on LinkedIn, on Slack, or whatever it may be, Twitter, and you're constantly getting distracted while trying to do keep the main thing, but you're not able to keep the main thing because you're worried about all these other inputs. There's an interesting stat actually, James, that we have more inputs in our brain in a day now than like our grandparents had it in a lifetime or something like that, because of all these notifications typically that we get via our devices. And so it's no wonder we're overwhelmed. So having detox, like you just said, like that's incredible.
Well, I want to do it once a quarter now, which is bold, but honestly, the amount of work I got done was, and this is what going back to what I was saying earlier about letting myself off the hook, that I'm not switching off, but actually recognizing that what I am doing is slowing down, and what I am doing is what I love doing, which is thinking and being me, which is being creative, having ideas, writing about them, be like, yeah, maybe not. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Joining the fucking dots, which I don't get time to do anymore. Have to provide that space to do it.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? Well, now it's for me to just take a couple of days off from the phone and the laptop and actually just do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's a good point. Every quarter would be awesome. Might even put that in the back pocket for myself going into 2023. One thing you touched on there is about writing.
Yep.
And this is something that I learned at Groov, was the power of journaling. And if there's one thing that I can recommend to anybody to try is at the start of the day, when you get up in the morning, when you have your morning coffee, whatever it may be, journal for 10 minutes. Just write whatever's coming to your mind, get it on paper. Sometimes it can be hard to write and get the words out, and you might not even know what to write about. But the act of starting to do that gets your thoughts out of your head onto paper, and it's like at the end of that 10 minutes, you're like, I'm ready to go. Yeah. I'm ready to have a great day because all the worries are gone.
Yeah.
And we would do this actually at Groov when we have like senior leadership team meetings. It might be like a 3-hour meeting, and we'd spend the first 10 minutes journaling. And when I was first introduced to it, I was like, what a waste of time. And then I did it for the first time, and I was just like, holy shit, I feel great.
So wait, the team meeting, all of you journal online or in the room for 10 minutes. And then what did you do with the results? Or what did you do after that? Or is it personal to you?
Yeah. So you
that's interesting.
Like, it could be anything, like, like I might be worried about, what I'm going to get for lunch that day. And so you're journaling about that, or you're worried about something actually that's work related, or there's something in your personal life that you just need to get out of your head and on paper. And afterwards, like I've never looked back at anything I've journaled. Usually just screw up the piece of paper and chuck it in the bin. But it's out of your head, and it feels, as soon as it's out of your head, the problem feels much, much smaller. And it's almost like you're saying you're solving the problem also by writing it down. You're like, oh, this is going to make sense. That's how I'm going to solve that particular thing. It makes you feel a lot better. And so I'd encourage people to try that, whether it's the start of the day or the start of a longer meeting. You do a little bit of journaling, because it just, you feel like, cool, I'm here, I'm present, I'm ready to rock and roll. There's nothing now distracting me.
This has been awesome. I don't know how long we've done.
Yeah.
Which is the essence of a good podcast, I suppose. Probably not for people listening to it, but fuck it. Thank you for coming on, mate. I obviously spoke to you about your story months ago, and I was like, I got off our call and I said to Abby, I was like, wow, God, that is hard. But the story you have, whilst it's unique to you, it is also something that so many other founders go through, and also other founders experience, and I believe don't really know how to deal with it successfully because we're not taught about it. And therefore this will be an amazing education tool for a lot of people who are just learning that it's okay to close a company. Yeah, it really hurts, but it is okay. Yeah, you're going to be all right.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, thanks heaps for having me. I think this initiative, Vulnerable Podcast, is absolutely needed. If there's one other piece of advice I'd give to founders out there, is create like a support network through a few of you. Like if you know other founders, get together once every month and be vulnerable with each other. Like let's not just talk about all the successes of how great our companies are going. Let's talk about some of the things that are causing us anxiety, because chances are the person to your left and right might have solved that particular issue in the past, and they can help, and vice versa. and it's just going to make you like, you'll be with people who understand you and understand what you're going through, and they might have some great advice. The other thing is like what you touched on before, therapy. It's good. It works. It's helpful. And that lastly, your value is not your company. You are valuable. You are loved. And make sure that you keep that at the front of your mind.
That's all right.
Cool as. Thank you.